What's up everyone? Today we are breaking down all the PvP changes for Discipline Priest. Patch 12.1 brings a number of changes to PvP, and while none of them are likely to completely redefine the game, a few could have some interesting consequences for the way matches actually play out. So before we get into the Discipline Priest, let's go through the global PvP changes first. Everyone is getting a little bit harder to kill. At max level, player health is going up by 25% along with creature damage. This isn't a PvP specific change, but it will obviously affect how combat feels across the game. The idea behind it is pretty straightforward. Less spiky damage, more time to react, and hopefully a little less of the classic experience where your health bar disappears so quickly that you start questioning whether you were ever actually alive. Battlegrounds are getting their own rather significant change as well. Players will now receive 20% less healing in Battlegrounds. And this is where things get interesting for healers. You are not just harder to kill because everyone has more health, your healing is also going to be less effective in Battlegrounds. In longer fights that should put more pressure on healing resources and especially for disciplined mana management. Next up, diminishing returns. The reset timer for DR categories going from 16 to 20 seconds. This means that once you have started building DR on a particular category of crowd control, those reductions will stick around for a little longer before the category resets. And then we have a small but very welcome change for anyone who has ever watched their character take a leisurely flight into a canyon. Players can no longer be affected by knockback effects while under the effect of fear or disorient. So yes, your Battleground Blitz career now slightly less likely to end with you being gently escorted off a cliff while completely unable to control your character. Gladiator distinction is also being adjusted. For damage dealers and tanks, the primary stat bonus is going up from 12 to 15%, while the stamina bonus is going down from 10 to 5%. For healers, the stamina bonus is going from 15 to 10%. Nothing complicated here. More primary stat for DPS and tanks, less stamina across the board. And finally, Blizzard is taking a fairly significant swing at movement speed reductions in PvP. A large number of snares are being reduced by a roughly one tier. 70 becomes 50, 50 becomes 30 and so on. The reasoning is that strong, constantly applied slows can remove too much of the positioning and counterplay from PvP. If you are permanently moving at the speed of a pensioner crossing a supermarket parking lot, there isn't exactly much room for clever positioning or a heroic escape. The interesting part is that Blizzard is mainly targeting slows that are automatically applied through normal rotations, while some activated abilities will retain their strength. And now let's get into Discipline Priest, because this is where things get considerably more interesting. First of all discipline healing and absorption is being increased by 10%. That's a pretty straightforward buff, but it becomes more interesting when you look at where that extra healing is going. Atonement healing is going from 30 to 32% of damage dealt, while Flash Heal is getting a 25% healing increase. So across the board, Discipline is getting more raw healing, and Atonement is getting a small but meaningful boost to its damage to healing conversion. Smite is also getting a 40% damage increase. Greatest Smite is getting some love as well. Its duration is being increased from 2 seconds to 4, and it's now a 1-point talent. This is actually pretty interesting for the way Discipline manages damage and mana. A harder hitting smite gives you more meaningful reason to hardcast it when you have the opportunity, and it can be a nice way to converting mana into pressure. The problem of course is finding the opportunity to actually stand there and cast smite. In an epic battleground, hardcasting smite on a player isn't always what I call a safe investment. Sometimes you just have to find a pet and smite the shit out of it. Next up, Penance is losing one of his jobs. Penance will no longer apply Atonement when cast on an ally. Blizzard's reasoning here is that Penance was trying to do too many things at once. Heal an ally, apply Atonement, or deal damage. In practice, this should make your decisions around Penance a little cleaner. But it also means you will need to be more deliberate about where your Atonements are coming from. Ultimate Penance is getting a 30% increase to both its damage and healing, which is a very straightforward buff to one of Discipline's major cooldowns. Inescapable Torment, on the other hand, is getting hit with a 30% damage reduction. So Blizzard is clearly shifting some of Discipline damage away from its more specialized sources and toward more consistent damage, with Smite becoming significantly more relevant. I mean, Blizzard, please. Make Smite instant somehow. With a cooldown. I will push it. Instant Smite can be like the ramen soup what you're eating at 3 a.m. when nobody's home. And then we get to one of the biggest changes to the Spec, Atonement. Atonement is being redesigned from a proc into a passive upgrade to Flash Shield. Instead of waiting for Atonement to trigger based on Shadow Word Pain, Flash Shield is simply upgraded into Atonement, a stronger heal with a higher mana cost. This is a pretty important change because it removes a layer of randomness from Discipline's healing. You are no longer waiting for the game to decide when you are allowed to use your stronger heal. But it isn't free. Shadowman costs more mana and the casting time is increased, which means you have to think more carefully about when you actually want to commit to the cast. You are getting a stronger and more predictable heal, but you are also giving up some mobility and burning through your mana faster. And that becomes important in Battlegrounds where healing received has already been reduced by 20%. In a long 40 vs 40 fight, that combination could put a lot more emphasis on mana management. You may have more powerful healing tools, but you also have to be much more careful about how often you use them. Grim Deliverance pushes Shadowment even further. It increases Shadowment's healing by another 30% and extends the Atonement is applied by 4 seconds at the cost of an additional 0.5 seconds of cast time. I actually checked it and it says 0.3. We will see that. So again, this is a trade. More healing and longer Atonement uptime, but an even bigger commitment to the cast. The other major redesign is Void Shield. Master of Darkness now gives you a deterministic way to get Void Shield. Mind Blast upgrades your next power Void Shield into Void Shield. The old Penance proc chance is also being reduced from 33 to 15%, while the Absorption itself reduced by 28%. However, the talent can now hold 2 charges. So once again, Blizzard is moving Discipline away from waiting for the slot machine to light up, toward actually planning when your defensive tools are available. Finally, we have the hero talent. For Oracle, Unfolding Vision has been completely redesigned. When Power Word Shield or Void Shield expires with Absorption remaining, the remaining shield jumps to the nearby injured ally. Although this can only happen once per shield. Void Weaver. I don't care. Void Weaver is getting more direct damage and Atonement synergy. With Void Blast damage is increased by 25%, Void Breath by 30%, and Void Infusion increasing Atonement healing from Void Blast and Penance by 75% during Entropic Rift up to 50%. But in overall, the direction here is pretty clear. Less random procs, more consistent damage and healing. Whether that actually makes the spec better to play is a different question. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section if you have any. Thanks for watching, take care, bye.